The person sending her hate comments online, telling her she was ugly, talentless, and didn't deserve her career, was her own mother. And she didn't find out by accident. She set a trap, tracked the IP address herself, and then revealed the identity live on camera, in front of 50,000 people watching in real time. No warning, no private conversation first, just the truth, out loud for everyone to see. This is one of those stories that sounds completely made up, like something out of a bad drama series that got canceled after one season because nobody believed the plot. But it's real, every part of it. And the more you dig into the details, the more unsettling it gets. Because this wasn't just a stranger hiding behind a screen. This wasn't an ex or a jealous coworker or some random person on the internet who decided to make someone's life miserable for no reason. This was the one person who was supposed to be in her corner no matter what, her own mom. So today, we're going to break down the whole thing from start to finish. We're going to talk about who Larissa is, how her career started, when the hate account first showed up, and how she started connecting the dots. We're going to go through the trap she set, what the data showed, and then what happened on that live stream, minute by minute. And we're going to talk about what came after, because the ending of this story isn't a happy resolution, it's more complicated than that. And I think that's exactly why it's worth telling. Let's start at the beginning. Her name is Larissa. She's 22 years old, based in Sao Paulo, and for the past 3 years, she's been working as a model and content creator. Not the kind of career that falls into your lap. She built it slowly. She started posting at 19, figured out her aesthetic, tested different types of content, and stayed consistent even when the numbers weren't moving. That's the part people don't see, the months of posting where almost nothing happens, where you're talking to an audience of a few hundred people and wondering if any of it is going anywhere. But it did go somewhere. By the time she was 21, she had around 80,000 followers across platforms. She had a handful of legitimate brand deals, not massive, but real. She was starting to get on the radar of some bigger modeling agencies. Things were moving. Now, to understand what happened next, you need to understand a little bit about her relationship with her mom. Her mother's name is Claudia. She's in her mid-40s. From everything Larissa has described, Claudia is the kind of woman who is very used to being the most important person in any room. Very outgoing, very opinionated, always involved in everything. When Larissa was growing up, her mom was the center of the family's world. Whatever was happening, Claudia was at the center of it. She organized everything, she commented on everything, she had a view on everything. And for a long time, Larissa was just an extension of that. So when Larissa started building something of her own, something that had nothing to do with her mom, something where strangers on the internet knew her name and her face and followed her life, that dynamic started to shift, and Claudia didn't handle that well. It started as small comments, the kind of thing you could easily brush off. When Larissa would mention a new brand deal, her mom would say something like, "Just make sure they're not using you," or "I hope you're not putting too much of yourself online." When she hit 10,000 followers, her mom's reaction was, "I just don't understand why people follow strangers." Not congratulations, not excitement, just a kind of low-level dismissal dressed up as concern. Larissa talked about this in her later video. She said she knew something felt off about her mom's reaction to her success, but she told herself it was generational, that her mom just didn't understand social media, that it wasn't personal. She gave her mom the benefit of the doubt for a long time. Then, about a year and a half ago, a new account appeared. The username was one of those random strings, something like user_49271, or a combination of random words that meant nothing. No real profile picture, just a stock image of some woman neither Larissa nor anyone in her circle recognized. The account had no followers, no posts of its own. It existed purely to engage with Larissa's content. At first, it was just comments, the kind of vague, mean stuff that content creators deal with all the time. Things like, "Why do brands even work with her? She has no real talent." Or, "Her photos are so edited she looks nothing like this in real life." Annoying, but not alarming. Anyone with a public profile deals with people like that. You learn to scroll past it. So Larissa did. She blocked the account made a new one, she blocked that, another one appeared. This cycle went on for a few weeks before she started realizing this wasn't going to stop on its own. But the comments were still vague enough that she didn't read too much into it. Trolls are persistent, that's nothing new. What changed things was when the account started getting specific, not just commenting on her posts, but reaching out. It started DMing people who commented on Larissa's photos, especially people who seemed like genuine fans, and saying things like, "I just want you to know this person is fake. She bought her followers, the brands she works with have no idea." It was going after her credibility in a targeted way, not just insulting her appearance or her content, but trying to damage the actual infrastructure of her career. And then came the moments that made Larissa's stomach drop. There was a shoot she had scheduled that fell through, a contract issue, nothing dramatic, just a miscommunication about usage rights that didn't get resolved in time. The shoot got canceled. Larissa was disappointed, but these things happen. She told her mom on the phone because her mom had asked how work was going, just a normal conversation. Within 48 hours, the fake account posted a comment on one of Larissa's recent photos. It said something like, "Word is she just got dropped from a shoot because no one wants to work with her. Difficult attitude, apparently." Larissa read that and felt the floor shift. Nobody knew about that shoot except the agency, the brand, and her mom. She hadn't posted about it. She hadn't told her friends. She'd mentioned it casually to her mom on the phone, and that was it. She told herself there had to be another explanation. Maybe someone at the agency talked. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe she was reading too much into it. But then it happened again. She had turned down a collaboration offer from a brand because she'd done some research and their labor practices didn't sit right with her. It was a personal decision, not a public one. She didn't post about turning it down. She mentioned it to her mom in passing, something like, "I turned down a deal this week. It wasn't the right fit." 3 days later, the fake account left a comment under one of her photos. It said something like, "She thinks she's too good for real work. Just turned down a paying brand deal because she's delusional about where she actually stands in this industry." The brand wasn't named, but the timing was exact, and the description, "turning down a paying brand deal," matched precisely what had happened. Larissa sat with that for a long time. She turned it over and over in her head. She kept trying to find another explanation. She wanted another explanation, because the explanation that fit all the facts was the one she couldn't bring herself to accept. She started doing what any person does when they're trying to figure out if they're going crazy or if something is actually wrong. She started writing everything down. She went back through months of the account's comments and activity. She made a spreadsheet. Dates on one side, what the account had posted on the other, and in a third column she noted if anything significant had happened in her personal life or in her career around that time. She was looking for a pattern, and the pattern was there. Not every time, not perfectly, but often enough that it couldn't be random. The account was most active on weekday evenings between around 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. That's already interesting on its own. That's not when a typical anonymous troll is most active. That's when someone who's done with their day sits down, has some time to themselves, and gets on their phone. More importantly, there was a consistent uptick in activity in the day or two after Larissa had contact with her mom. A phone call, a visit, a family dinner. Something would happen, something would be shared, and then within 24 to 48 hours, the fake account would post something that felt like it had access to the inside of Larissa's life. She told 2 of her closest friends what she was thinking. Their reactions were exactly what you'd expect. One of them laughed, not cruelly, but because it sounded so impossible. "Larissa, there's no way. Your mom would not do that. That's insane." The other one was more careful, said something like, "I hear you, but you need more than a feeling and a timeline before you go saying something like that out loud." They were right. A feeling and a timeline wasn't enough. She needed something concrete. This is where Larissa did something smart. She started researching IP tracking. She didn't have a technical background, but she knew the basic concept, that when someone accesses a link or a website, there's a log of the IP address the request came from, which can be traced to a general location. Not an exact address, but enough to narrow things down significantly. The challenge was that she needed the fake account to click something she controlled, something that would log the IP without being obvious. She spent about a week thinking about how to do this. She didn't want to tip her hand. She didn't want whoever was running the account to get suspicious and go quiet. She needed the bait to feel natural. Here's what she came up with. She created a Google form. On the surface, it looked like a brand collaboration interest form, the kind of thing an influencer might genuinely send out when they're trying to organize their partnerships. She filled it with realistic-looking questions. What's your brand name? What type of collaboration are you interested in? What's your budget range? That kind of thing. Normal stuff. She sent this form to a small, specific list of people, about 15 contacts in total, people from her professional network. And she included her mom on that list, sent it to her directly with a message that said something like, "Hey, I'm organizing my brand partnerships. Can you fill this out? Just gathering info." Her mom wouldn't have any reason to be suspicious. As far as Claudia knew, this was just a normal business thing.
Planning it took another 2 weeks. She wasn't impulsive about this. She went back through all her documentation one more time. She organized everything. The timeline, the screenshots, the IP data, the side-by-side comparisons of private conversations and fake account posts. She wanted to be absolutely sure that if she was going to say this in front of a large audience, she could back every single word of it up. She also thought hard about the ethics of it. She talked to her 2 friends again, this time telling them everything she'd found. Their reaction was different the second time. Neither of them told her she was being paranoid. One of them actually cried. The other one said she understood why Larissa was considering the live, but encouraged her to think carefully, because once something like that is out, it's out forever. You can't take it back. Larissa said she knew that. She said she'd thought about it constantly, but she'd also spent 1.5 years of her life under attack from someone who was supposed to love her. She'd lost sleep, she doubted her own work. There had been moments where the account's comments, coming so regularly, so specifically, had genuinely made her question whether she should keep going, whether she was actually good at this, whether she was fooling herself. She said that knowing what she now knew, staying quiet felt like protecting something that didn't deserve to be protected. So she announced the live. She kept the announcement vague. She posted a story saying she was going live the following evening to talk about something that had been seriously affecting her mental health and her career for over 1 year. She said she had receipts and she was ready to share them. That was it. No other details. Her audience, obviously, went immediately into speculation mode. Her comments filled up with people guessing what it could be about. Some thought it was a brand deal gone bad. Some thought it was about another creator. Almost nobody guessed correctly. The next evening, she went live. By the time she actually started talking, 50,000 people were in the stream. She was calm. That's the thing people talked about afterward, how calm she was. She wasn't shaking, she wasn't crying. She sat in front of her camera with a glass of water on the desk beside her, and she just started talking. She started from the beginning. She told the story of her career, how she'd built it, what it had taken. She talked about the fake account appearing and what the early comments were like. She walked her audience through the escalation, how it went from vague insults to targeted, specific information that no stranger should have had access to. She put screenshots on screen, comment after comment. She read them out. And then, side by side with each comment, she showed the private context that the account seemed to have drawn from. The shoot that fell through, the brand deal she'd turned down, a few other examples that she hadn't talked about publicly before. She explained the pattern she'd noticed in the timing. She pulled up the spreadsheet she'd made, months of data laid out visually. She walked through it carefully. Then she explained the IP tracking. She didn't go deep into the technical side, but she explained what she did, why she did it, and what a Google Form IP log actually captures. She showed the data. She showed the lookup result. She showed the location marker on the map. And then she said her mom's name. Just like that. Clearly, calmly, the way you'd say any other fact. The chat went absolutely insane. Within seconds, it was moving so fast she couldn't read individual messages. She said she glanced at it once and then looked away because she'd told herself before the live that she wasn't going to let the chat pull her off track. She had a story to tell, and she was going to tell it the right way. She kept going. She talked about why she didn't confront her mom privately first. She was direct about it. She said she knew her mom, she knew how her mom handled conflict, and she didn't trust that a private conversation would lead anywhere except Larissa being made to feel crazy. She acknowledged that some people would disagree with that choice. She said she'd made peace with that. She also said something that I think a lot of people in the comments responded to. She said she wasn't doing this to punish her mom. She was doing it because she'd spent 18 months of her life being picked apart by someone who had her trust, who knew her schedule, who knew her news, who sat across from her at dinner, and then went home and wrote hateful things about her online. She said she needed people to know what had happened, not for the attention, because keeping it to herself had been destroying her. The live ran for 45 minutes. She took a few questions from the chat near the end, then she said goodbye, turned off the camera, and sat in her apartment alone. She said the silence after was the strangest part. By morning, the clips were everywhere. The internet, as you might expect, had about 10 different reactions simultaneously. A large portion of people were on Larissa's side immediately. They sympathized, they shared the clips, they talked about how disturbing the whole situation was. The hashtag with her name trended in Brazil within a few hours. Another group, smaller but vocal, criticized how she did it. They argued she should have confronted her mom privately first, that airing family issues on a live stream was exploitative, that she was using her own mother's breakdown for content and clout. Some of these people were strangers. Some were, she found out later, family members who hadn't been aware of any of this until they saw it on their timelines. And then there were the people who simply didn't believe her, who said the IP tracking was too convenient, that she'd made the whole thing up for attention, that there was no way a mother would do that to her own daughter. Those were hard to read, she said later, not because they upset her, she'd expected them, but because they said out loud the thing she'd spent months telling herself. There's no way a mother would do that. Claudia went quiet for about 4 days after the live. She didn't post, she didn't respond publicly. Some family members reached out to Larissa on her behalf, not to apologize, but to tell Larissa she'd gone too far, that she humiliated her mother, that she owed her an apology for making this public. Larissa didn't respond to most of those messages. Then Claudia called her directly. Larissa picked up. She said she picked up because she'd spent years wishing her mom would just talk to her honestly. She picked up because even after everything, she wanted to hear something real from her. It didn't go the way she hoped. Her mom cried. She cried for a long time on the call, and Larissa said she sat there and let her cry because she understood that her mom was in pain and she wasn't going to deny that. But then, once the crying slowed, Claudia started talking, and what she said was not, "I'm sorry." What she said was closer to, "You have to understand how hard it's been for me, watching you build this whole life that has nothing to do with us, watching strangers become more important to you than your own family. I felt like I was losing you." She framed what she'd done as a reaction to pain, as something Larissa in a way had caused by pulling away. She didn't use the word sorry once. Larissa said she listened to the whole thing, and when her mom finished, she said something like, "I hear you, and I'm sorry you were hurting, but that's not what you did to me." And then she ended the call. She hasn't spoken to her mom since. She lost some family members over it. An aunt who had always been close to her stopped talking to her. Some cousins took sides. A family gathering she'd normally have attended that Christmas, she didn't go. She heard from a relative that her mom had told people at that gathering that Larissa had fabricated the whole thing. About 3 months after the live, Larissa posted a follow-up video, longer, quieter, no drama, just her talking to her camera about how she was doing. She said the months after the live were genuinely hard in ways she hadn't expected. She expected the public attention. She expected some backlash. What she hadn't fully prepared for was how exhausting it was to have something so personal become so public. Every day, someone new was discovering the story, forming an opinion, sharing a take. She couldn't control the narrative anymore. She'd put the truth out there, and it took on a life of its own. She also talked about the guilt. This was the part I think a lot of people in the comments responded to. She said she still felt guilt about it, not about exposing the truth, but about the fact that it was her mother. She said you can know something is the right thing to do and still feel bad about doing it. Those two things can exist at the same time. She talked to therapy about working through what it meant that the person who was supposed to be her biggest supporter had been her most dedicated attacker, about what that does to the way you trust people, about learning to rebuild that slowly. And she said something near the end of that video that I keep thinking about. She said, "For a long time, I thought I had a stalker. I was scared of this random person who seemed to know everything about my life. And then I found out it was my mom. And in some ways, that's worse. But in some ways, I don't know. In some ways, it was almost a relief, because it meant the thing I was afraid of had a face, and I knew that face, and I could decide what to do about it." She decided to keep going. She's still posting. Her numbers grew after the live. She got more brand opportunities. She also got a lot more people watching her with the wrong intentions, waiting for her to slip up or have another drama. She talked about learning to filter that out, about remembering why she started doing this in the first place, because she enjoyed it, because it was hers. The fake account has been dormant since the live. No new comments, no new activity. Her relationship with her mom is, for now, finished. She hasn't